All right, so here we are with the fabulous Dave Rubin, who is becoming very quickly the king of all media. Forget about Howard Stern. I think we now have a new king in town. I
Wow.
can't basically throw a stone without your name somehow coming up on one of my feeds. How you doing, Dave? Good to see you.
Gad, I'm doing great. That's a very generous and nice and probably slightly ridiculous intro. Yeah, some good things are happening right now, which is really nice. But I want to start this thing, even though you're the one interviewing me. I want to start this thing by thanking you because you were the first guest on my show. Technically,
Thank you.
it was for our first episode when we launched, it was Sam Harris.
Yes.
But you came on. You happened to be in LA the week before, and we needed to do a test show. You were in town. I wanted to sit down with you anyway, and it worked out. And really, because of our conversation and meeting someone who I knew in the digital space and that I tweeted with and chatted with and all that, because of that, it helped the awakening in me that all of us now, there's so many of us that we've been connected with, and I think we're going to talk about a bunch of them. But it sitting with you that day really helped my awakening, and it helped me understand that I wasn't the only one feeling this way. I wasn't the only one thinking these things, and that there were other people out there that wanted to talk about the same stuff. So a lot of it came from you. So you said something nice about me. Now I'm saying something
Well,
nice.
aren't you sweet? So tell us about the. Thank you for those very kind, generous words. Tell us
Yeah.
about the show. I know that you've had some fantastic guests. Just kind of give us a summary of where we've been so far and how do you envision the show moving forward. I mean, are you going to sort of expand the scope of some of the guests, or what's your vision of where we're going to next?
Well, it's really funny because I'm getting so many people now that are emailing me or tweeting me or whatever, telling me that they want more long form content. We're doing hour and a half interviews now, which we started on YouTube. When we launched this thing on the Young Turks, we were on YouTube. YouTube, I don't know what to tell you. People watch 30. If they watch 30 seconds, that's a long time. You know what I
Right,
mean? People's attention spans have been frayed to the point of being non-existent,
right,
basically. And we that's the way we launched when we started the show on TYT for 2 years. We were doing news stories for about 5 minutes each and clipping them short and whatever. And I loved doing it, and it was great the way we were doing it. And then when we came to Aura, I really did want to do the long form thing, but I didn't realize it was going to be like this, where really I was going to be sitting down with people like you and Sam Harris and Majid Nawaz and Ayan Hirsi Ali and Douglas Murray and all these other people, and really just forget the rules of YouTube. Also, we're not, I know we're on YouTube at the moment, but we don't view this as a YouTube show. We're on Aura Television, which
right.
is Larry King's digital network, and it's on Roku, and they're working out all these other deals for us. But we make the show for that.
Right.
YouTube is really just, for us, we're viewing YouTube as it's still discovery. I love the YouTube audience, and I really do love the YouTube audience. I know they get a lot of shit, and everyone hates them, and they're trolls and whatever, but not our audience. I think if you
Right.
build something good, then good people will find you, and I think we've done that pretty well. But just by having long form conversations, not
Yes, yes.
screaming at each other. I want to hear what you think, and I hope you want to hear what I think, and we're going to go back and forth. And I'm going to talk to people on the right and on the left and see what happens. And I'm not going to shout everyone down and use all the pejoratives, and I know we're going to get into some of that and some of the tactics soon. But the show has become something that I didn't even expect it to become.
Well, and
We,
I think if I can interject, I think that part of that comes from the fact that you have a very and again, it's not to blow more compliments up your behind, but
Come on, Dad, bring it.
it's because it really is the person who's interviewing you or sort of leading the chat. If they are affable, if they're respectful, if they don't interrupt you, if they create a safe space for you, you like that transition, huh?
Yeah, oh,
Uh,
that was good.
then of course the conversation is going to flow very nicely, and of course you're going to get people who might otherwise maybe be tepid to appear on your show saying, well, hey, look, all these guys have appeared and it really turned out well. And I've gotten actually people contacting me and saying to me, I mean, pretty prominent people saying, hey, you got to hook me up with this Dave Rubin guy. So now I'm officially your booking agent, it turns out.
I will gladly give you 15%.
Oh, that's very kind.
I think
uh,
industry standards 10%. I'll give you 15%.
oh,
But well, that's really nice to hear. And for me, it's like I treat the show the way I would treat a friend if I was having coffee with them or having a drink with them. What we're doing right now. I just made a coffee, you're drinking some water,
Right.
and we're just going to do this, And that's the way I treat that. Everyone is so exhausted of this cable news
Yes.
nonsense. Somebody on the left, a Republican operative and a Democratic fundraiser, and they just do talking points, and they worked. In most cases, they usually worked for the same people that they're talking about, and they're all liars, and they're all on the take. And I've been going to some of the debates now, and I've been to the spin rooms and things of that nature, and I see how close it is. And look, I love it. I love politics. I love the game. It's messed up, and I'm trying to be part of it and interview. I interviewed Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She's the she's the chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee. Her whole job is to make money for the Democrats. The week before, I interviewed Michael Steele, who's the former head of the Republican National Committee. His job was to, and I asked them both about money. Nobody's doing that, but I treat it as these are the things that I'm thinking about, and I think they're the things that most people are thinking about, and we have to be able to have conversations. We have to be able to look. Michael Steele said something really interesting to me. I said to him about the money in politics. How much of your job was just about raising money? And he said, basically, from morning to night, he was just on the phone. Can I get money? Can I get money? Can I get money? And I think in our view, the average person hears that and thinks that everybody that's giving money suddenly has bought access and is controlling everything. The average person that you give $5,000 or whatever you give, you have no control over anything. You know what I mean? I would say give no politician anything. Let them all starve, and maybe they'll start treating us better. Maybe they'll start working for the people if we stop giving them money, right? But the point is that we're so off track here. I forgot what your original question was.
Go for it.
But that when people talk about money in politics, what we're really talking about is the 0.1%. We're not even talking about the 1%, because the 1%, we've seen a lot of studies. That means you could make around $400,000 a year. I don't make close to $400,000 a year. I make a lot less than that. But at $400,000 a year, you're not pulling strings. You know what I mean? But you're in the 1% and you're doing really well. And most of us would be happy to be in that spot, right? But it's the hundreds of millions and the billionaires that are pulling. I think you asked me about the show and what I'm doing.
Before you go on, I'm hearing a blowback or an echo. Are you hearing an echo when I speak?
No, I don't hear an echo.
Okay, good. I hope that when we play it out, it won't be a problem. Okay, so you're not hearing anything. Well, I guess, just to kind of piggyback on the YouTube experience, I find that there's something quite intimate, and I guess the people that watch you or me in this medium, I think feel that because, I'm basically in my study now. I'm in my home, right? I'm not in a studio. I'm not in a, right? As you said, you're drinking your coffee, and I think that creates a intimacy with people, and I see it because a lot of the mail that I get from people, it really seems as though they write to you as though they know you, right?
They do
know you, exactly, because they're seeing you all the time. They're seeing how you think. You're really granting them access, and actually, I find it very exhilarating. I mean, a lot of people find that as an intrusion. Now, obviously, I don't share photos of my children or my wife, so there's a very clear distinction in my mind between my public life and my private life. But I actually get very, very enriched by all of these interactions. It's not a burden to me. On the contrary, I find it just so exhilarating to be able to reach so many people. And as I've mentioned in other contexts, I'm just amazed that there aren't more. If I speak about academics, since that's the world that I inhabit, that there aren't more academics that take advantage of all of these opportunities. Now, of course, many of them don't necessarily have the personality for it, right? So it's not as though if you're an expert in whatever field that you're an expert in, that you could pull this off. Of course not. But I think that there are some that I'm aware of, some colleagues of mine that, have a pretty, nice personality. But I think that they're terrified, and I guess we'll get into that. They're terrified of a misstep, of a misstatement, of a wrong tweet that might sort of shatter their whole career that they've built. And so they'd rather stay away from it rather than do this kind of engagement that you and I are doing, right?
Yeah, so you're so right. And let's hold some of the free speech stuff off for a second. Sure. But I think you're right on that point, that everyone is afraid of one faux pas that they think is going to screw up their career. But we'll talk about that in a sec. But in terms of the intimacy of it and what's so beautiful is, right now, we're just having this connection, right? We're through this wire here, and I don't even have a wire, through this wireless thing. Somehow you in Canada, me in LA, we're doing this thing. We've come to know each other only over the course of literally 4 months. You know, we've met once in person. We've chatted, obviously, and most of what we do is in 140 characters. But we bonded over something that we both, there was this idea of, for us, it had a lot to do with, obviously, the regressive left and feeling left out as liberals and all that. And that brought us together. But in terms of what you're saying about intimacy and YouTube and all that, yeah, guess what? You can look at, this is my study, if I can call it a study. It's basically my mess room, you know? And these are the things that I care about. I got an old transformer here. I have a basketball here.
I see a basketball. Let me interrupt you. Is that the basketball you play with Cenk?
No.
Because I want it off the set if you're playing with that ball. I don't want the short...
No, it's not the basketball I play with Cenk. This basketball actually was used in an NBA game in the early 90s by the Portland Trailblazers, who were my favorite team at the time. Clyde Drexler was my hero, and he signed it. So it's never been dribbled since I got it. But that goes to the intimacy thing. I mean, you can see things that I care about here. You know what I mean? A picture of my dog back there. I got I don't know if you, right here, I have a little, somebody sent me it's a mock-up of the Golden Girls house.
Right.
And I think that sort of thing, like where they can get into your lives a little bit. And of course, I want certain levels of privacy, and I don't want people to know where I live or, you know, and that kind of stuff. And believe me, I've had some weird instances. But the point is that television became so fake. And then for a while, some of the internet became really good. It became like this outlet to get alternate news and hear opinions you wouldn't hear through the corporate bullshit and all that. And then that ended up having a lot of drawbacks too, because it was completely unfiltered to the point that whether it was true or untrue was unchecked, right? And that's what I really found as being someone that was part of the far left, right? And what we can do is be who we are in this space and know that all these other people are digging it, and that's really cool. That's really cool because it's validating. Everyone wants some validation, right? The stuff that I'm talking about on my show and the guests that I'm talking to, the only reason I'm doing it is because I wanted somebody else to do it. You know what I mean? If somebody else had been talking about these things and I felt like they were getting out there, I guess I would have done something else. But here we are.
So I'm noticing that there isn't any photos of a recent momentous event that happened in your life. You recently got married. I'm not seeing that photo.
Oh, I did. I got gay married.
You got gay married, that's right.
Or as some people call it, married. You know what we have? There's some digital pictures around here. So I think there might be one printed out somewhere. We haven't even looked through the pictures yet. I haven't had a freaking moment.
Did you guys go away anywhere, or what was the story?
We got married in Sonoma, and it was just our immediate families, so parents, siblings, nephews and nieces. We got everybody into a house, and we had family that had been living all over the place, India and Costa Rica and Israel and all over. And because of that, we realized...
You mean Palestine, not Israel, right? You mean
right, exactly. Yeah. Historic Palestine. Yes. So we realized that some of our siblings hadn't even met. And we were like, you know, we're going to do a week in Sonoma. We're going to get a ton of wine and a lot of great food. And we're going to just get these people to know each other. And it was really great. And it honored the things that we love. And I think that's what a wedding's supposed to be about, right?
Sure. Congrats. Now, did you get any on either side, yours or your husband's name is David too, right?
He's David too.
I met him. He's the producer on your show, right? Yeah, lovely guy. So Dave and David, anybody on either side decided to take a stance against the heathen bastards and refuse to come to your wedding, or was everybody on board? Everybody's happy. Everybody loves what's going on. What's the story?
Well, again, we had a pretty select group because it was just the immediate family. So there wasn't, a lot of opportunity for people to not want to come. I have to say, it took certain people in my family longer than others to come around. And, a lot of people still say this to me all the time. You don't act gay. You don't act gay. Which I don't know what that means. Like, what do you want me? You gotta
have a bit of a lisp.
So they want a lisp, and they want you to act effeminate, and all of these things. And look, I am only who I am. Now, I came out late. I like basketball. Right. I like, Star
Wars. So when did you come out?
I came out in my, it was a long process for me, but it was mostly in my mid-20s. And I had been doing stand-up already for years. And it was a lot of stuff that kept me closeted. First off, the world was very different then. And gay is cool now. It's thought of as cool. You as a straight white man, that's the worst right now.
Well, sorry, Middle Eastern. Give me some non-privileged points.
Yeah, you're a little more fair-skinned than last time I saw you.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's what happens when you leave SoCal. You turn green in Montreal.
Your glow last time was incredible. Half the comments.
I saw a few. Now I've been demoted to just a regular guy based on those comments. My goodness, it was tough to keep my ego in check.
Yeah, so your social justice points are going down as a white man. So you're better in the summer. In the summer, you're more oppressed, I suppose. Wait, where were we?
Yeah, no. So you were saying about it took you a while to
and coming out and everything. So it took me a long time, and because the time was so different, I thought if I came out, first off, I just was in denial. I was really just in denial for a long time. It's as simple as that.
But when do you think you knew? What's the earliest memory you had that you could sort of point to, saying, I think my attraction is kind of channeled to same-sex attraction? What can you?
I mean, I definitely had that concept probably around 11 or 12 at some level, but I always felt, I know it's cool to say, it's always cool to say, oh, I always felt different or I always felt special. I didn't. I really didn't. I felt like my friends. Like we'd play, we'd get on our bikes after school and we'd run around the backyards and we'd do all this crazy stuff. I didn't feel different than anybody.
Right.
But I think maybe if I had been a little different or a little more self-aware, maybe I would have felt different, and maybe I would have come out earlier and saved myself a certain amount of pain and repression and whatever.
Right.
And when I say sometimes to people when they ask me about this, like there's a period in my life in my early 20s that I don't even remember that well, actually. And I think the reason for that is that it's hard as a human being to live one life, right? Just to live one life on this planet is tough, right? We all have problems and, love and life and family and money and whatever. We all have shit. It's hard to do that for one thing. And then try to add a second secret life to that.
Right.
And it makes it immeasurably more difficult. There were times, I remember, I mentioned this, I think, to Joe Rogan. I remember once when I was really sort of at the end of the closeted phase, when I really realized that something was wrong. And I was walking down the street. I lived on the Upper East Side in New York City, and I was walking down the street, and I was going to a job that I didn't like. I was doing stand-up at night, which, by the way, the angst of being closeted and the pain was really good for stand-up. So I was very successful right out of the gate, because I had a lot of shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was like I didn't have to date. Like my mom would be like, people would say, well, why isn't Dave with anybody? Mom would say, well, he's doing stand-up. So it was like an excuse also. Like I was always busy at night, so I never had to date or anything. But anyway, I remember walking down on the Upper East. I was walking down the street, and the buildings, picture just a big New York City Upper East Side buildings. The buildings were literally shaking. They were vibrating. That's what I saw. I literally saw that because it felt like the whole world was like apart. Like it was that. So I have great empathy for anyone that's closeted, and partly that has helped form my worldview and why I want to help all these people in the Middle East and wherever they are. You know what I mean? Whether you're repressed because you're an ultra Orthodox Jew who is not allowed to say that they're gay, or whether you're a Christian conservative or whatever it is, because I know what that is. And Bill Maher said something really great on this. He said when you do this to people, this sexual repression, it's fertile ground for terror. It's fertile ground for extremism. And I can understand that in a very intimate way. And that's why also when I had Douglas Murray on, I didn't even know he was gay until a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
He's a neocon in England, right? And we had the whole conversation. And then at the end, I asked him if some of his beliefs, his desire to help people. Now, some people could say, well, you're bombing people, you're not helping them. Sure, that's a separate argument. But that if some of his desire to help spread Western values, and perhaps he's misguided in the route that he wants to do it.
Right.
But if some of those things are based in that he is the other as a gay person, does he identify with those people being thrown off roofs? And he sort of said yes in a roundabout way. It's a really interesting piece at the end of the interview if anyone wants to watch. But it was a major struggle. It's not something I like thinking about or talking about. And some of the scars are with me still. Like, it's not fun to think that you were hurt,
Right.
You were a wounded animal, and I was. And it's not fun.
I've got a similar dark secret. I mean, similar only in that it's a dark secret. It's called growing up Jewish in Lebanon.
Yeah, I bet.
Look, the reality in my case was that, of course, if people wanted to find out that you were Jewish, they just had to go to the synagogue on Saturday and know that you're Jewish. And people who were in the know certainly knew that we were Jewish, but you certainly didn't advertise it. And even when I came to Canada as an 11-year-old boy escaping the Lebanese Civil War, there was always the sense that you kept quiet about your Jewish faith. So much so that when I would speak to people often, especially people who were from the Middle East, and of course we'd speak in Arabic, then all the anti-Semitic stuff would come out precisely because they didn't know what I was. And so I've always been very cognizant of the fact that, I was different. There was a dark secret about me being Jewish. And I remember, I may have mentioned this maybe on the Joe Rogan show, when I was studying at Cornell and as a doctoral student, I used to hang around with a lot of, Arabic guys, obviously because of my background, most of whom were, well, all of them in this case were not Jewish. And I remember one guy who was a Muslim fellow had said to me, Gad, I really like you. I said, okay, well, why is that so? Why do you seem to be surprised? He goes, well, because, you're Jewish. I said, yeah. He goes, but, the thing is, though, you're not a Jew. And I said, well,
Jew.
You're right. I said, no, but I'm a Jew. And he said, no, but you know what I mean. You're not a Jew. And so this is the kind of reality that I face now. It's, of course, very different from your context of sexual orientation, but you feel this thing that you have this hidden part of your identity that can't be let out in any context.
By the way, this is why Jews in general have stood up for almost every other in history. Right. This is why Jews were marching with Martin Luther King, right? This is why there are so many Jews involved in the gay rights activism. Exactly. Starting, Harvey Milk was Jewish.
Yes.
There's a reason, because Jews know what it's like to be the other. So that's very important. A friend of mine, it's not just about religion or sexuality or whatever. A friend of mine who's Asian said to me that growing up, he grew up in a mostly white community. I think he said it was all white. He might have been the only Asian in his class or something. And he said he lived with this incredible pressure that he wanted everyone to love Asians. So he had to behave like the greatest person on earth ever, because he thought he was representing all Asians. Now, that's slightly different. He couldn't hide that he was Asian. But that, everybody has these weird things. And by the way, related to you specifically, when I came across you on Twitter, Gad Saad, I assumed you were Arabic.
Right.
Or Arab, and I didn't care, and then I found out you were Jewish, and I didn't care. It makes no difference, and that's why the identity politics, and we can veer there a little bit, is such epic crap, because it's irrelevant. I only judge you on the thoughts that come out of your head and the things that you say, and I judge you on nothing else. And whether you tell me these things as a Muslim from Lebanon or a Jew from Lebanon or whatever it is utterly irrelevant to me.
Which incidentally, sorry to interrupt you, but true classical liberalism, is founded on the principles of, individuals, right? Individual rights, the pursuit of individual liberty. Everything is prefaced with the word individual. And of course, in the context of the way that the word liberal is used today, it is very much associated with identity politics, which is the perfect antithetical position to classical liberalism, which of course most people are not even aware of this distinction, right?
Right. So in that regard, we really, and this growing movement that's out there now, and there is no question that it's growing, are really classical liberals on that front. And in a lot of ways line up in many respects with libertarians, which is why I think there's becoming this union between the sane libertarians and the sane liberals. And that's why there's so much cool stuff here, and that's why it's good to connect with you. By the way, we should mention, as long as we're talking about the religion thing real quick, that both of us are atheists.
We are.
Now, I was never particularly religious in any way, but I did go to temple. I was bar mitzvah, the usual stuff, whatever. I grew up in Long Island, so I was around a lot of Jews growing up. But what I think is particularly interesting is I've tried to believe in some whatever. It just hasn't really worked for me.
Right.
But it's funny because as I've become involved in this discussion that we've been having related to the regressives and this whole thing and the new atheists and all that, I have a lot of people that are atheists that follow me, that tweet at me all the time. And I had never said publicly that I was an atheist. I always considered myself, whenever I would have atheists on the show, Cara Santa Maria, often, for example, I always considered myself an ally to them because I always thought, well, here are people that are working off logic. I don't sense bigotry in them or hatred, which is, of course, the ultimate irony of the regressives, that they want to paint new atheists as these demagogues, which is such horseshit. But I always considered myself an ally. And it's only in the last few months where I think literally it's only about 2 months ago, believe it or not, where for the first time ever I publicly said it.
Wow.
I never look. I'm not big on labels anyway.
Sure.
But at some point, I think actually it might have been in my interview with Milo Yiannopoulos, where we were talking about atheism, and finally I said it because I realized that I can't trick myself into believing something, but not even that, as much as I think my audience knows what I think and knows what I believe. I'm very transparent about that. But I felt like I needed to say it in a way. And people were saying it about me constantly, so I felt like I had like a debt to them or something.
Would you introduce yourself or call yourself an atheist Jew? I mean, that's the way I call myself, and I know that Ali Rizvi, who's somebody who has he appeared on your show yet?
No. We've been talking about.
Okay, well, Ali's going to be on my show next week. And he's got a book coming out. I guess he'll be happy that I'm plugging it for him now. I think it's called The Atheist Muslim. And think
about that.
Yeah.
Think about how beautiful that is.
Yeah.
You as a Canadian, Lebanese, atheist Jew meeting up with a Muslim atheist.
Beautiful.
I'm not even sure where he is. Where is he? Is he in London?
No, he's also in Canada. All great men come from Canada.
But the point is that, and that goes to what we started with this about these cool, interesting people that are like-minded, connecting now. We all were looking for the same thing. And this is one of the most dangerous things that the regressives have done by turning on the atheists or the new atheists. Everybody knows there's no doctrine. There's no doctrine. The reason that the regressives are coming after the atheists is because they know that this is a group of people that is pretty damn decent. And not only are they pretty damn decent, but they care about facts.
Right.
They care about facts. They don't care about ideology, right? So in a weird way, if you're trying to repress people by language and you want to pin everybody off in your little boxes, the hardest thing to do is to do it to an atheist, because by any definition of atheism, we should have nothing. Right. We should have no set of beliefs that are the same other than we don't believe in God, right? And that's why they're going after them as hard as they are. And that's also why I was being the advocate for the atheists before I even said it, that I was, because I realized how crazy it was. And that's why I've been one of many reasons, it's not the only reason, but it's one of many reasons I've been such a staunch defender of Sam Harris. Right. Because here's a guy who staked out some seriously controversial positions, was lambasted and slandered horribly, and needed some allies. And I guess I'm one of them.
Yeah, I recently communicated with one of his most vociferous detractors. No, not Reza Aslan. I mean, there's a bunch of them, but I guess I'll mention his name, C.J. Werleman.
I'm not even going to talk about him.
Yeah, and boy, it's quite impenetrable to try to have a conversation with him. But let's move on. I want to go back. I just want to share with you 2 quick personal anecdotes about the sexual orientation issue.
Oh, wait, can I just quickly, why I brought up the Jew thing? Sorry. But the reason that I mentioned that is because not only is it so cool, but I think a lot of people would say, well, how can you two sit there and be atheists and say that you're still Jews? That it doesn't quite make sense. And for me, being Jewish is an ethnic identity.
Of course.
The way that somewhat, like the way a Puerto Rican would identify with Puerto Rican culture, right? Or a Turkish person might identify with Turkish culture. I identify with Jewish culture in that I eat bagels. I really like comedy.
Well, there is I was going to say there's Jewish humor, there's Jewish
there's plenty of, obviously there's Jewish history and all that stuff. But so to me, it's not tied up. I don't view it exclusively as a religion.
Right.
It's an ethnicity. And I know a lot of people struggle with that. And I'm sure Ali has his own struggles related to being Muslim and identifying with a culture and whatever. But it just goes to show that things are multi-layered. And guess what? Everyone picks and chooses how they're gonna live their life accordingly.
Absolutely.
Now,
I guess I was gonna talk about two personal anecdotes related to sexual orientation, which I think you'll get a kick out of them. And then, if you wanted, I could mention very briefly some interesting scientific research within my realm that deals with homosexuality, and then we could get into some of the campus stuff that's going on that's really pissing me off. So story one. So I'm 15 years old. It's 1980, and I go to the movies with my mother. One of the only times I've ever gone. I can't remember another time that I've gone to the movies with my mother. It was just my mother and I. For some reason, I don't know where my father was in this picture. And we went to see, I don't know if you'll know the reference, we went to see Cruising with Al Pacino. Do you know what that movie is about?
I've never seen it, but I do know what it's about. It's like one of those cultural references that I've sort of caught over the years.
So let me mention it to our viewers who may not know, who may be a bit younger than us. So, of course, most people know Al Pacino, a very famous actor. So in this movie, he basically he's a detective who infiltrates the gay underworld in, I think it was in New York, but more specifically, sort of the gay leather underworld, where people are cruising for sexual encounters. And I remember very vividly that depending on where you wear your scarf in your left pocket or right, it signifies something. And so I went to see this movie with my mother with no underlying signal that I was trying to send her. But as we were leaving the movie theater, her color has changed. It's changed from the Middle Eastern color to a very white color, a snow white color. So what's wrong, Mom? She goes, are you trying to tell me something with this movie? To which I had to tell her, assuage her fears, that no, Mom, I wasn't trying to come out to you. I just really like Al Pacino.
That's funny. Did you know, as a 15-year-old, did you know what the movie was about?
I mean, I don't think I knew I think I knew that it was a movie where he goes after a serial killer. I don't think I knew sort of the underlying gay component. So that's one story. The other story I thought that you might enjoy, because it kind of links both our discussion of sexual orientation and the Jewish angle. So in 2008, I was giving a talk at the American Psychological Association meetings, which is, perhaps the biggest scientific conference of psychologists. And as we were going from the hotel to the venue by bus, a graduate student meets me and we start chatting. And so she asks me, what are some evolutionary explanations for homosexuality, to the extent that, of course, some homosexuals will not reproduce. How could that be something that is maintained? How could it be selected for? Which, if you want, we can get into or not. And anyway, so I gave which at the time, and I think it still is, probably the most common explanation for the evolution of homosexuality. And there's a gentleman who was sitting in front of us who turned around, who I guess was overhearing the conversation, and said, "That's hogwash. It has nothing to. It's not natural. It's not innate. It is learned." And as a matter of fact, and I want to get his name right, I wrote an article on Psychology Today. So his name, he was the director of a group called Jonah. Have you heard of this group?
Is that one of the it's one of the ex-gay things?
Well, it's Jews Offering New Alternatives to Homosexuality. The gentleman in question was...
Only a gay person could even come up with that.
So the guy's name was Arthur Goldberg, and basically it was through the study, I think it was through Talmudic tests or something, I'm not sure if it is you pray the gay away, but you certainly sort of navigate through religious texts so that you could get away from your sexual orientation, which must have been because your uncle gave you a bath or because you watched too much Oprah. And which, of course, is a very interesting issue, because a lot of the people who are very strongly for, say, for example, in queer studies, they'll say that heterosexuality is imposed as a social construction, but my homosexual orientation is natural. I mean, natural is innate. So they don't quite see the irony of that position, right? The sort of the default reproductive position of human mating systems is a arbitrary patriarchal social construction, but same-sex orientation is natural or innate. So I thought you'd enjoy that.
Well, I think my main takeaway from that would be how I feel about most of the discussions about sexuality at this point, which is I'm sort of over it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like so much of my life force was invested in this, was challenged by it and invested. And it's at the end of the day, as I sit here with you right this second, it's okay because those experiences helped get me here,
yes.
right? So it is okay, even though, as I said before, there's a lot of it that I'm not fond. I don't think back of fondly, and it was an inside job. I was doing it to myself,
right.
and all of that stuff. Yeah, society was saying something, but ultimately I was doing a lot of it to myself. And that's why a lot of the sexuality stuff, it's like, yeah, there's still things that need to change. And, there's still laws that are problems. And, here in America, the Supreme Court did do the right thing on my birthday, by the way, June 26th.
Oh, very nice.
But a lot of, for me personally, spending time thinking about it and discussing it and why this and was this learned that, it's just like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Well, it does matter to scientists, right? I mean,
it does matter to scientists.
Yes.
It does matter to scientists. Yeah, no, and I get that. And people should study. I'm all for scientific discovery.
Right.
But in terms of, I know a lot of times people want to talk about it with me, and I'm glad we did in this context.
Yes.
But as a general rule, if 6 months from now I was never asked about it again, and people just didn't care, or they said you're married. And they just asked me the same old things, and it just was utterly irrelevant. That's where you really want to get, of course. I know you know that, but
got it. All right, let's get into some political correctness, some campus stuff. I don't know where to start because there's a lot of good stuff that's happened. I mean, good stuff, tragic stuff. I guess maybe we could start with the first one, which is fortuitous in a temporal sense. In that yesterday I had Greg Lukianov, who is a terrific guy, who, by the way, should be on your show, and I'll plug him right now, and I'll tell him.
You really are my booker.
I am your booker. He's a lovely guy, also a fellow atheist Jew. We're pretty much dominating the world, aren't we?
Don't tell everybody.
I know. I know. We should keep the conspiracy hidden. But so anyway, so he's a First Amendment lawyer who is the president of FIRE, which are you familiar with them?
I'm only familiar with them in the last few days because I read a couple of pieces on their site.
Yeah, so Greg is a good friend of mine, and he was on the show yesterday. So I really urge you and all your followers, your very sizable followers, to check it out. So FIRE basically stands for Foundation of Individual Rights in Education. So what they basically do is they serve as a watchdog against transgressions by universities to the First Amendment. And the most common way where that happens is via the speech codes that are implemented in universities. You can't say this, you can't wear this, you can't joke about that, which of course every single one of those don't do this and don't do that are straight violation of the Constitution. And so, as you may know, I'm just going to sort of summarize this case, and of course, because he was personally involved in this case. So Greg was invited to Yale. This is the Yale debacle, which I think you're familiar with, right? You tweeted about it. Yeah. So Greg was invited to Yale by Nicholas Christakis, who is at the center of this new debate or debacle, and he was invited to come and give a talk about some of these issues. And what had happened, the administration had sent out an email saying, look, be sensitive, don't wear these types of Halloween costumes, it will offend this group and that group and so on. And Christakis' wife, who holds some lectureship and some administrative position at Yale, wrote back a incredibly gentle and properly worded email, which if you haven't seen it, have you read it?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, where she basically said, maybe we shouldn't be coddling students. Maybe we should give them a chance to, if they want to be transgressive and dress and have fun. Maybe it's not our business to be, imposing what they should or shouldn't wear. Of course, that started a whole commotion. Nicholas then decided. By the way, Nicholas, I'm very familiar with his work, although I don't know him personally. He's a incredibly, not that that should matter to the issue, but he's an extraordinarily accomplished scientist. Just a guy that would be an asset at any university and certainly at Yale. So he decides to hold a sort of public meeting with a bunch of these students who were upset.
Can I just jump in real quick, just for one moment, just to really clarify what she said in the letter.
Yeah.
She basically said, if someone is wearing something that you don't like, either ignore it or engage in a conversation as to why you're offended. I think it's important to mention that because she was saying use your right to free speech to express why you and have the battle of ideas. So I just think it's important to really.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yes, thank you for that addition. And so now, who happens to be there on the Yale campus? None other than Mr. First Amendment lawyer himself, Greg Lukianoff, who takes fortuitously a tape, right? There's these 4 short tapes where he films the interaction, if we can diplomatically call it that, between Nicholas and all of these unbelievably belligerent and ominous-looking students who are kind of surrounding him. Some of them are shouting at him, swearing at him, suggesting that he be fired or resign. And anyways, later, this you may or may not know, sort of the sequel to the story. Later, Greg was interviewed by someone after his talk or maybe before his talk, and he said, I can't believe that there was this reaction. One would think that a whole Indian village had been eradicated.
Yeah.
And now like the beast is into an infinite loop of, perpetual grievances. So now they turned on him for making light of genocide and the Indian problem and so on, and some people were spat at. So I mean, what do you think is going on? Are we ever going to get out of this? Is the fulcrum going to swing back, or are we doomed to a life of lunacy?
Yeah, well, first, Gad, I think your next book should be called An Infinite Loop of Perpetual Grievances.
I'm working on it, by the way. There are some agents that are very interested in what I'm saying.
That's a pretty great title. I can see the movie already. The screenplay's out there. All right, so get on that. That's number one. Look, as a liberal, and I have to preface this by saying as a liberal, and as for all the other reasons that we've discussed so far, I identify with the other. I always want, and will always go out of my way to try to understand the person that feels that they're the other, that feels that they're oppressed, or feels that they are not being treated well, or being the victim of real racism or bigotry or whatever. I just want to put that out there.
Sure.
So that's number one. That being said, when the girl was yelling at him and demanding that he be fired or quit his position and all that, by the way, exercising her right to free speech.
Right.
So if she wants to yell at him, she's welcome to yell at him. What she said something that was completely crazy, and it really was the perfect unmasking of the regressive left.
Right.
She said, and if I don't give you the exact quote, you either correct me or I'm sure people down below will. She said, this isn't about creating an intellectual space, ... It's about creating a home.
Right.
She's talking about college.
Yes.
She's talking about a university. She has that 180% wrong. It's hard to get something 100% wrong, but she did, because a college is about creating an intellectual space. That's all it is. I smoked a lot of pot in college, but I do remember that the whole point of it was for an intellectual space, and I had plenty of stone debates about the meaning of life with all my other stoner friends, And I think you're a Carl Sagan fan. I remember seeing Contact super high in college.
Wait a minute, Carl Sagan is from Cornell. That's my school.
Yeah, by the way,
go ahead.
My dad went to Cornell also, and I'm guessing he's about your age. So when we're done, we'll.
Whoa! About my age? I'm 51. How old are you?
All right, he's a little older than you.
Come on, man. That hurt. I mean, I'm just gonna call my wife to take out the knife from my back.
Sorry, it's the salt and pepper. It's
51, man. Come on.
Sorry.
All right.
All right. So you didn't. All right. Whatever. Anyway, point is, You look good. That's what I'm saying. The
Thank
point is, you look good. Um, anyway, she got it completely wrong. You have to. A college is only there to debate ideas, to have the battle of intellect, to hear things you don't like, to engage with people that believe other things, and let the battles win. Not demand that people be fired because they say things that you don't like. So that and also the idea of creating a home. No, it's not. I know that sounds nice, and it feels kind of nice, like this college should be this home and this safe, protected space. But no, a college should have a dorm that you live on, and you go there and you go to the commissary to get food or whatever it is, and you learn there. And yeah, it can be nicer than that. You can hopefully meet friends for life, or maybe meet your partner for the rest of your life, or whatever. But she really had it backwards, and that's the danger. And that's why this is a threat to free speech, because demanding people be fired, she's literally demanding he be fired for defending his wife writing something about free speech. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
So I'm gonna maybe slightly toot my own horn here by saying that I was well ahead of that curve in starting to rail against this BS probably about 15 years ago. And let me tell you how I was exposed to it originally. So I'm a professor in Canada. I mean, I'd studied in the US, came back to Canada. My first professorship was here in Canada. But then I took on visiting professorships at three, very elite universities, one of which was my alma mater, Cornell. And I had noticed at the time that there was a distinct difference in students' attitudes in Canada versus in the US. It wasn't in the context of safe spaces and trigger warnings and microaggressions. Those terms were not known then. But what you definitely could detect, and I think I could detect it better than others precisely because I had the Canadian versus American experience, you could really detect that the American students, perhaps because they spent a lot more money in terms of their tuition, there might be several factors at play, but they were astonishingly entitled. Now, of course, given that I teach at a business school, that is ramped up. It's on really hyper steroid levels. So when you have an MBA student, right? I mean, if you're studying Greek philosophy, ancient Greek philosophy, you're likely there for the intrinsic reasons of wanting to study Greek philosophy. If you're doing an MBA, you're possibly there to study for an MBA, but you're also there as a careerist, right? As somebody who thinks that the MBA will improve your career. So you may not be intrinsically motivated to pursue your MBA. And so I noticed then the aggressive bent of many of the students who expected you to take into account their personal schedules when setting up exams. I mean, I can't make the exam on November 7th, Professor Saad. I mean, I have a business trip that day, right? Okay, great. So let me take 100 MBA students and individualize the exam to each of your idiosyncratic needs. I'll tell you another very quick story. So one of the universities that I had been offered a visiting professorship, an unbelievably prestigious business school, felt that it wasn't enough that there were teaching evaluations at the end of each semester, which is very common at any university. And one can debate whether those teaching evaluations are appropriate or not. They felt that students had to have more active role in sort of shaping a professor's pedagogic abilities. So halfway through the semester, the students would set up a teaching evaluation where they would decide whether you're on the right track or not. So they would come in as a group. There'd be 4 representatives from the class. And it was really a bizarro world from Seinfeld. So I'm sitting in my office and 4 students would come in and say, okay, your mastery of the knowledge, okay, excellent, Professor Saad. Your ability, so literally in front of me, my students were evaluating me. Now that was very, empowering because, the students are the customers. I'm the service provider. So once you start using these types of very grotesque words, you're attacking the integrity of the educational system. And so already then I had noticed some ugly trends. So in a sense, I was well ahead of the curve thinking, I mean, I couldn't predict that there'd be microaggressions, but I knew that these students were profoundly entitled, and I think that's where we've ended up now.
Wow. I mean, that's really incredible. That's really, truly incredible. And I'm sure many professors have stories that are probably even more perverse than that.
Right.
Um, Look, what's happening right, it's funny. I thought, because we've been talking about so much about the PC stuff and the free speech stuff on my show for the last 2 months, I thought I was ahead of the curve because of everything this week, but you were really ahead of the curve. Look, the other real issue here is that because of the way that the regressives have framed everything about race and religion and things of that nature, the work that they've done, and it's not really work, the disgusting mess that they've created is now coming to haunt them.
Right.
Because even when I heard people on MSNBC, which obviously leans, it's supposed to be, they say it's left, but in America it's hard, everything's sort of corporate, but it leans somewhat left, right? They had all of their people, I heard them debating it, they had like 6 people on, and they all of them basically were saying, this is crazy. This is actually legitimately crazy and an assault on free speech. But you could tell they were all a little bit afraid to really say it. They were a little bit afraid to sound like they were somehow the oppressor or they were somehow racist. Yeah. And that's why it's gross, it's racist line has become such a powerful idea in the circles that we exist in. Because that was the gauntlet that was thrown down for when it was not applicable at all.
Right.
And all of these people that didn't defend, and I don't want to make this about Sam, but that didn't defend the right principles all along. So probably many other professors that were put in your position that never speak about it, but all the people that have seen this train rolling through, right, that never said anything. Well, now they're on television and they're suddenly like, oh shit. Now this is really out of control. And it's not, I'm not judging that girl or anyone else by their race or religion or anything.
Right.
Other than the ideas that they put forward.
Well, I was going to say that, I think you know this from, having followed me on Twitter and so on. I'm just made in the way that I fight, right? I think I have I guess a lot of self-confidence and I have a very good sense of what is right or wrong, and damn it, I'm going to fight and shove it in your face when you're an asshole, right? That's just the way I'm made, okay?
Yeah.
Now, of course, that may not be something that is common to most people, but what amazes me is that without having to be as much of a sort of principled fighter as I might be, I'm just astonished, and I mentioned this yesterday to Greg when he was on my show. I'm astonished at how so few professors take up the battle, precisely because, and again, I say this knowing that a lot of them are only going to hate me for pointing this out, but it doesn't matter, how they are afraid of their own shadows. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the cowardice, right? So, for example, there was a case a while ago, you may have heard of it, and if you haven't, it's worth to discuss here, of Laura Kipnis, Professor Laura Kipnis. Do you know who that is?
It doesn't ring a bell.
So she basically is a I think film studies professor at Northwestern, of course, a very prestigious university, and some students had written some article. I might get some of the details wrong, but it doesn't matter for the purposes of telling it. Some students had written about how it's unsafe for them in the university because every 4th girl is getting raped, which of course is nonsense. And it's the rape culture and so on. And so she had written an article, again, exercising not only her freedom of speech, there's kind of an extra layer, there's academic freedom. She's a professor. She wrote an article, I think, in the Chronicles of Higher Education, where she sort of was trying to temper the idea that, women are afraid to walk on campus because they're getting gang raped at every corner. Some students filed a suit against her under Title IX. Now, listen to what Title IX is. I hope I don't botch it because I'm not a U.S. lawyer. Title IX is the act that guarantees equal access to all forms of educational opportunities to women. So, for example, Title IX is used when you're trying to make sure that women's sports are equally represented on university campuses. Now here, the way they argued for like a Title IX pursuit is that by her challenging their position of there being a rape culture, she was creating a hostile environment on campus that didn't permit them to safely pursue their education. Hence, she was in violation of Title IX. She wrote an article to rebut their position. And then, of course, she was put through the ringer. It was unbelievable. And of course, I saw that. I came out fighting. I mean, I don't know this woman, right? I don't care about this woman. She lives in another country. But I just felt that I had to intervene. I wrote, of course, to Joe Rogan and many of the powerful and famous people that I know. And of course, then they retweet, so it goes viral. And of course, I did the same thing with Nicholas Christakis now. And then I look around and I look on my Facebook page. You know, out of the hundreds of professors that I have as Facebook friends, I'm lucky if 2 of them press the like button on Facebook. And that simply disgusts me.
Yeah.
Go,
and
take it away.
This is purely, everything you're saying, everything that's going on right now is purely a creation of this identity politics thing. It is coming back to wreck everything. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Right. I think they had some good intentions here. They wanted to look out for the other, but they kept looking out for the other to the point that they boxed everybody in so that nobody else could be seen. And now everybody's desires, everybody's grievances are fighting against everybody else. And that's not the way we're supposed to be. It's simply not the way we're supposed to be. It is a sad mess. But on the hope part, is that I see the response to the stuff that I'm doing. I see the response to the stuff that you're doing, the stuff that Joe Rogan's doing, Sargon Abakat, a bunch of other YouTube. It's a lot of YouTube people, actually, because we're truly unfettered and all that. We can put this stuff out there and do that. The video that I shot yesterday, a 4-minute video on this exact situation in the college campuses. It was on the front page of Reddit today.
Wow.
You know? And got a couple 100,000 views. I'm not sure where it's at right now, but people are responding and people are waking up. And we need them to get, not only do we need them to get louder, which is what I said in the video, the next step is that I do notice, and I've said this before about a lot of the atheists, that they still are anonymous online. You know, they still have cartoon avatars and it's not their real names. And believe me, I 100%, as someone that was closeted, you know, gay, I understand the need to protect yourself and whatever. These people could live in places where they could live in Saudi Arabia for all I know. They could live. I got a Facebook message maybe 2 weeks ago from someone in Canada who said that he's been dating and in love with a Muslim girl, and her parents found out and they threatened to kill them, or to kill him. Sorry, to kill him.
But peacefully, kill them peacefully. You have to say
Totally peacefully. It had nothing to do with doctrine or anything.
Exactly.
And he was reaching out to me to ask for advice. I had literally no idea what to do, and I thought it was sort of crazy he was reaching out to me. I did connect him, or I passed his information along to my guest on my show yesterday, Faisal Saeed Al-Mutar, because that's what he does with movements.org. He helps people in closed societies. Now, the point here is that Canada is an open society, so I don't think Faisal could do anything for him directly. He has to go to the authorities. But the point is that all of this stuff, by not calling out shit when it's shit, and by not calling out bad ideas when they're bad ideas, we've all created this. So to the point about the avatars and the anonymous people, we need people. It shouldn't be just left on the few of us that are now rising, right? It's not fun. It's not fun.
Right.
What's fun and what's cool, as I started this whole thing with you, is it's great that we've connected this way. It's great that so many of us are connecting this way. We need a lot more people to do it. We need the people that are watching this right now to do it. And I know, and hopefully some of them will say after this, I get messages all the time, people saying, I can't post this on I love your message, but I can't post it.
I get the same thing.
Yeah. You know, I can really relate this to the gay thing very easily, because when I used to have a show on Sirius XM, and it was on that because I was gay, they threw me on the OutQ channel, the gay channel. Of course, you know me, I wanted to do politics and really important stuff, but I was on the gay channel. I enjoyed it. It was a great show. I really enjoyed it, but it wasn't really what I wanted to be. And we used to get email all the time from the show, and people would say the same shit they're saying to me now, but just in a different context. They'd say, I've never heard a gay show like this before. I never heard gay people that I could relate to, et cetera, et cetera. It was really wonderful. But I said to my on-air partner one day, I said, you know, this is crazy what's going on here. The people that we're affecting the most, the people that are closeted, that need us the most, are the same people, because of the closet, that won't tweet about us, won't Facebook
Exactly.
post us, won't write a review on iTunes. All the very tools that we need to grow the show bigger and get sponsors and grow and grow and grow. These are the people that are our number one fans hurt us the most.
Yes.
And that is in a way related to what's going on right now. We need everybody to get up. People are waking up. I've definitely seen in the last couple of days, there is a sense in the ether, like enough is enough.
And isn't it unbelievably empowering? I mean, of course, at times overwhelming, but when you receive, I mean, I look at it with quite a bit of humility when I receive so many messages. I mean, my wife oftentimes gets angry at me because she always sees me, answering something. She's like, take a break. Well, because you really do feel a responsibility, because once people sort of view you as somebody who can guide them through important issues, I take that, I'm not cavalier about it. I take it very seriously. And I get people who write to me about things that relate to some of the things that we talk about or not, because they really view you at that point as somebody whom they trust. Your opinion matters to them, and I think that's incredibly empowering, and it's a responsibility that they're giving you that you have to kind of treat with care. And so oftentimes when I'm discussing with my wife, she says, well, I mean, you already have a very busy scientific life. I mean, why are you answering this guy? Well, I'm answering this guy because he took the time to write to me, and I'm always amazed when I write to a colleague whom I know well about something and they don't respond. I mean, I'm answering some Pakistani guy who's writing to me from Lahore about something, and I don't know this guy, and I'm taking 25 minutes to answer him, but I can't get some asshole colleague to respond to my email.
Listen, I 100% hear you, and it's first off, for the record, I do read everything that people send me. At some point, it's at this point it would be virtually impossible to respond to everything, but I at least try to send people a line back or a thank you or something. I really do. And sometimes even in the morning, I'll just catch up and respond to a lot of things at once if I have that moment. But also, your brain and your spirit need a break every now and again too. Yes. And we put, I do find that I put so much of myself out there that every now and again I do have to try to not do that too. That's not directly related to getting these letters specifically, but like, you do have to have some space with your crowd too.
Do you get a lot of, I mean, I think, if I may speak for both of us, I think we're both, very reasoned people. Our language is careful in the manner that we speak. So, even though, of course, I receive some vitriol, I think I certainly don't receive as much as many of the people that we know. And in your case, how is it? Is it that, 99% of the people are super lovely, or do you get tons of hateful stuff?
No, I'm knock on wood. 99% of the emails, even the tweets, and even if you look at my YouTube comments on my channel, I'd say probably 80% of those are positive. Yeah. If you go to any other remotely political or social channel, of a certain depth or whatever, and they're completely awful, and everything's about Nazis, and everyone's a Zionist Nazi, and and they hate fags and blah and all this shit. And we've built something really good, and I really love it. And so to your point, I really think that in the last few months, this whole experience, I do take it with a great amount of, I take it with pride, and I also take it with a certain amount of responsibility. And I think it's actually made me a better person. Right. Because when you realize, when this really started snowballing, and who knows where this is going to be in 3 months from now, who the hell knows? But when this thing started snowballing, I started realizing when people were writing me such intimate things, that in some ways I thought these people think better of me than I think of myself,
Oh, wow, yeah.
And that makes me want to be better. So I'm trying, you know what I mean? Like I try all the time, and I fail all the time to be as good as I want to be. But like, I really do. I take that to heart, that this is real. And by the way, the reason, I'm not sitting here, like applauding, like I'm not doing this so that we can applaud each other about fan mail. Much to say, the reason it's important to address is because it acknowledges that people care about this thing. They're not just saying, I like you, Gad, you're a nice guy, you're funny, you send, your Aslan Uyghur decoder was funny or amusing. They're saying, wow, you're talking about something that I want to talk about. When I get an email like I did literally this morning from someone in Sweden saying, we desperately need people like you to talk about this in our country? Can I connect you with some people that I think would be great for your show, because I want people to hear about what's happening in Sweden, something we never hear about in America, right? That's powerful stuff.
It is.
That's powerful stuff. So I did respond to him, and I'm trying to find now someone in Sweden that'll talk to me about what's going on over there. But they're having their left wing went crazy, from what I can gather right now, and I'm by no means.
And I've got some contacts, by the way. Oh, Sweden! Yeah. Sweden is by far in sort of the progressive, regressive left lunacy of the West. Sweden is on hyper steroids. I mean, it's a collective suicide of the most grand scope you could imagine. What is the name of that guy? It was Reverend Jones in the 70s where they committed all suicide. Well, instead of it being a couple of hundred people committing suicides, and I think it was in Guyana, they're committing suicide. 10 million Swedes, and in 10 years, Sweden is dead.
And think about that. Nobody's talking about it. The media is not mentioning it at all. I don't know that much about it, but when I heard this and I did a little research and I checked out some names that he sent me, I thought, well, this is something interesting to talk about. So let me get someone on the show to talk about it. So that's how this is all real, and that is the hopeful part of this. When we talk about all this stuff and it sounds so depressing, and the last couple of days, I sort of feel like we're in this dystopian future now with all the language stuff, and I feel like we're in 1984, and but there is some hope here, and that's what the hope is, because by connecting people, they'll wake up. They are waking up.
So tell me about. I know that tomorrow you're traveling, so I don't want to keep. I mean, we could go on for 2 more hours.
Let's do. How long have we been going?
We've done an hour and 6 minutes.
An hour and I think we can do an hour and a half here.
Great! Let's keep. Oh, fantastic. Okay, so I was gonna kind of do the wrap up, so we don't have to. Thank you.
No, let's go. No, because there was so much we wanted to do.
I know. Yeah. I wanted to talk.
Was keeping me going.
I wanted to cover a few. I think I had tweeted this to you earlier today. There's a few clips that I did on my YouTube channel, which I just want to, however time we have, to go over some of them, because they capture some of the lunacy that we've been talking about. So let me start. Let me see which one I should start with. Oh, here's a good one. So there was a Israeli woman, I think she was a graduate student, who did a study. This is in Israel. I think it was at Hebrew University, which is one of the prestigious universities in Israel. She's, I think, Jewish based on her name. She wanted to study the fact. She wanted to empirically document the prevalence of rapes by the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. Are you laughing because you went and checked out?
I'm laughing. I watched it. I tweeted this out because I thought it was such a great video that you did. But go ahead. I shouldn't be talking about rape.
Yes. Well, you're not laughing about rape. You're laughing about the end result of the story. So she wanted to document, the prevalence of rape among the IDF, since they're the oppressors, they're the colonizers, they're the evil Zionists. And so she does a study, and to her dismay, she finds out that there isn't a single reported case of rape by the IDF of Palestinian women. Not a single case. And so her conclusion was, by the way, before I give the conclusion for those who may not know what the conclusion is, I told this story to kind of add a personal element to it. So there's this elderly Jewish couple that I sometimes see at a cafe where I hang out when I'm working on my laptop. I told the lady that story, and then I had paused to tell her, so what do you think the conclusion of her study was? And of course, she couldn't think in such a diabolical manner to come to that conclusion. When I told her the conclusion, which I'm about to share here for the viewers, she broke out crying. She was so personally injured that somebody could be so diabolical in their thinking that she broke down and started just sobbing. So anyway,
so now tell it, because it's pretty disgusting, actually.
So the conclusion that she came to, this is a Jewish woman. Right, so imagine the self-flagellation, the self-hatred. She thought that this is an instantiation of how racist, bigoted, and hateful the Israelis were, because they were so racist against these Palestinian women, they dehumanized them so much that they weren't even worthy of being raped. So if you raped the Palestinian women, of course you were a grotesque person, as is right. And if you didn't rape them, that was also a manifestation of how grotesque you were. It's just breathtaking that somebody could actually have a neuronal system that could fire in this manner. But go
Yeah,
ahead.
without getting too deep into the Israeli-Palestinian thing,
Yes.
that's really an excellent example of sort of, and even though this woman you believe was Jewish, it's sort of an example of how crazy Jew hatred is.
Yes.
Because, first off, for the record, as you know, I am not someone that throws around terms of bigotry, and
No.
and I know plenty of people that I think are sort of bigoted in certain ways to different little things, but I don't scream bigotry and racism every time someone says it or call them an anti-Semite or whatever. The strange thing with Jew hatred, who Jews have always been the ultimate other, which is why the Jews have been hounded and hunted and pogromed and genocided and holocausted throughout history.
I like how it turns into a verb, holocausted. I've never heard that.
Holocausted. I think I just made that up. I have family members on both sides, on my mom's side and my dad's side, who died in the Holocaust. I don't take pleasure in that, nor do I take, like I'm trying to guilt someone or something. It's a fact. It is a fact. Every Jewish holiday is about, oh, not all of our people were killed this time. Thank God, which is part of the reason that the God thing sounds so ridiculous to me. Because every single holiday, Passover, Hanukkah, Purim, whatever the name of holiday.
Well,
What?
He loves you by the fact that he didn't exterminate all of his people. That's his love.
Everybody, this guy. I got to tell you about this guy. Yeah, he's the best. But so it's ingrained in Jews that we are the other, right? Which goes to what I said earlier about why Jews have been on the forefront of civil rights for so long. That doesn't mean that the Old Testament is right or good or whatever. There's some horrible shit in there. You can say anything you want about it, just like I would say you can say anything you want about the Quran or the New Testament or whatever. Okay. But what your story relays to me is there is a specific craziness to hating Jews, because if you're a capitalist, you'll say, the socialist Jews. Yeah. And if you're a socialist, you'll say, the capitalist Jews. And right now, just very simply, again, without getting too deep into the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, there never was a state known as Palestine. There was the British Mandate of Palestine, which there was the Ottoman Empire for a long time. You know, our YouTube friend, Lalo Dagash, who I think, did you do an episode?
He asked me to. We haven't been able to schedule it yet, but I will be on.
He is a great guy and a free thinker and a true atheist and a really wonderful guy who I'm so glad that I've connected with. We talked about Israel and this stuff and Palestine. I think he said his great-great-grandfather emigrated from Palestine around 1915 or something like that. But Palestine at that time was part of the Ottoman Empire. They referred to themselves as Turks. Right. I had never heard any. So the Palestinian nationality didn't even exist back then. He said right now in Chile, all the Palestinians call themselves Turks, which is a really interesting piece of this puzzle. Right. So the reason I bring this up is that right now, when people talk about an occupation, you know, Turkey right now is in occupation of Cyprus.
That's right.
Cyprus is a sovereign nation recognized by the United Nations. Turkey occupied it in 1974. There are roughly 500,000 Turks that were mainland Turkish people that moved to Cyprus. They have been in occupation. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. And guess what? I'm pretty sure if native Cypriots started suicide bombing and stabbing everybody, I'm pretty sure Turkey would annihilate all of them immediately. But for some reason with the Jews, it's a little different. When you see videos every day of stabbings, people driving cars into innocent people, stabbing. I mean, you can go on YouTube, stabbing innocent women. It has nothing to do with occupation. It has nothing to do with any of that. Israel could give them whatever they say they want, which pretty much at this point now everybody says they want the whole thing. But they could give them anything. They could give them anything, and it still wouldn't be enough, because this thing is the perfect confluence of geopolitics and religion.
Right.
Because they're teaching this shit in the mosques. They absolutely are. There's a geopolitical problem without question, right? But there's geopolitical problems everywhere. There's something like 200 occupations and military interventions going on in the world right now. No Jews, no news.
I was going to say the exact same quote. Yeah, exactly.
It's very depressing and it's very sad. And just one last thing on this. when I see that my friends on the left are so against Israel, the one tiny, absurdly tiny place, smaller than New Jersey, that represents any of their ideals in that part of the world, that has, look, please tell me what place in that part of the world, the 50 countries that are right there, have any progressive values.
Right.
A Supreme Court justice that is Arab, that 20% of their electorate is Arabs.
You have Arab parliamentarians in the Knesset who stand up and speak for the destruction of Israel.
Yeah.
Imagine if you had a Jewish member of the government in Saudi Arabia saying, "Let's blow this joint up."
Of course. No, look, nobody cares about the 850,000 Jewish refugees that left in 1948 to go to Israel, that left all the Arab nations. No one says they should get a right of return or any of this stuff. The United Nations has an organization. They have two refugee organizations. One is for all the refugees of the world, and then they have a separate one for Palestinians called UNRWA, that actually is the only, Palestinians are the only refugees that, according to the UN, their children and their children's children and their children's children still count as refugees.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be only 2 generations, and only in their case, it could go longer than 2 generations.
Right. So they have perpetual, their numbers of refugees go up no matter what. I said to Lalo, I said, you technically, I think you could count and probably be a refugee. The point is that for some reason, when Jews have been the ultimate scapegoat, and so my friends on the left, I think, sadly, are very misguided in that they will scapegoat everything. It's as your Aslan decoder,
Aslan Yugur.
The Zionists control everything. You think the fucking Zionists, they left Gaza, they don't want Gaza, they didn't leave so that rockets could shoot there. It's all craziness. And we need, if you want peace, look, I tweet about peace. I tweet articles about coexistence. I tweeted this amazing, I think you tweeted it too, this wonderful Arab-Israeli, I think she's Muslim, but Arab-Israeli newscaster in Israel.
Yes.
Tweeted, who is treated as an equal there. She's on television. I think their winner of their version of American Idol was Arab, but she was tweeting about how the stabbings are no good. It's not going to bring peace, blah, blah, blah. And it was about equality. And I tweeted that. And I've tweeted many other things about equality and how to be better and that blame can be placed all over and all that stuff. No one on the left tweets about equality.
Well, I genuinely think
no one on the left tweets about coexistence.
Of course.
No, they don't.
The
far left, I should say. I don't mean the left.
Sure. The Israel hatred is a cover ultimately for Jew hatred. Now, I don't mean to imply here. I should sort of preface this by saying I don't mean to imply that, and I hate that I even have to say this, but that I think you know where I'm going. That there aren't things that Israel does that we could all agree that are reprehensible. Just like any time you have human agents, people are going to do wrong things, and it's not as though Israelis are these perfect agents that don't commit atrocious things. And so we could certainly criticize Israeli policies. But the reality is that the irrationality with which Israel is constantly bombarded with the vitriol that they're bombarded with is only a cover for Jew hatred. And as a matter of fact, I know this because when I speak to people in Arabic, the Israel stuff very quickly fades into the background. It's Jew hatred, right?
Yeah.
It is endemic to every. Now, again, this doesn't mean that every single person who lives in the Middle East has hatred of Jews. I obviously lived in Lebanon. I've met more nice, decent people from that region that most of you could ever imagine. But is it everywhere? Is it in the bus driver? Is it with political speeches? Is it in cartoons? Is it in humor? The way you insult somebody in the most profound way is to call them a Jew. It is part of the cultural DNA of that region. So it's got nothing to do ultimately with land. It has to do with a religious tenet that basically says that once a land has been dominated by Islam, it can't revert to someone else. This is why. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're of course you're right. Of course you're right. But if people want to even take it in less of a philosophic sense, but in a literal sense, you can look at headlines from the 1950s, front page of the New York Times. I'm sorry, not the 1950s, the 1940s, front page of the New York Times, before the State of Israel was created, where the Arab countries were boycotting Palestine because that's where the Jews live. Like, there are so many instances of utter insanity. The PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, that ultimately has become the Palestinian Authority.
Yes.
Everyone says this is about the occupation in 1967. So what year do you think the Palestinian Liberation Organization should have been founded?
After.
You would think after. It was actually 1964. Well, what were they trying to liberate if this is around about 1967? Here's, I promise, my last piece on this. Have you been to? I assume you've been to.
I've been 3 times. Oh yeah, I've been several times.
So when people talk about this place, what they don't even understand is that the Dome of the Rock, an Al-Aqsa Mosque, which was built on top of the remains of what once was the Jewish temple, that's why it was on top of it. All the Jews have left is a wall, right? They've got a wall to pray to. Again, this God, he's so amazing that he left them a wall. But they're literally on top of each other. Yeah. And the platform that Al-Aqsa Mosque is on, which is the holiest site in Judaism, Israel, which controls it, doesn't let Jews pray on Judaism's holiest site. Now, I say this as someone that is not interested from the religious angle.
Right.
I'm talking about the geopolitics of this situation. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is the third holiest site in Islam. I have no idea what the third holiest site in Judaism is. Right? If the first holiest site is just a wall, then what's left? Maybe a rock.
It's a rock. Yeah, exactly.
It's a pebble. But my point is that one side has protected religious interests and religious freedoms. Before 1967, before the city was united, Jews weren't allowed to pray at the Western Wall. They weren't allowed to go to the Western Wall. The city was not united. So all of these things, even right now, Israel has agreed to put cameras at Al-Aqsa Mosque, right, to monitor it all the time. And guess what? The Palestinians and the Jordanians don't want to do it.
Incidentally, are you familiar with the term dhimmi? Do you know what that is? A dhimmi?
I know I should know it.
Okay. I'm not to put you on the spot, just so that depending on how much I should explain. So a dhimmi in Arabic, so it's the concept that when Islam takes over a land, people of the book, which basically refers to the two other Abrahamic monotheistic religions, Christianity and Jews, so people of the book can be offered a status as a dhimmi, whereby they pay a jizya.
The tax.
Right. And that tax, I mean, you're really your third, your fourth class citizen. I mean, in a doctrinal sense. Now, in different contexts over the past 1400 years, that has been either adhered to very, very punctiliously or in a somewhat more informal manner. But even if you take in the context of Lebanon, where I grew up, intolerant, progressive, pluralistic Lebanon, you were not an equal in the sense that, you had to be careful about, flaunting your Judaism. You couldn't be president of the country. You couldn't be the head of the military. So you were, quote, tolerated, right? So usually when you talk about in the past 1400 years, eras where Jews have coexisted peacefully with Muslims, it's where Jews know their place, right? So be quiet, we'll tolerate you until the day we decide to not tolerate you. So in our case, everything was fine. And in 1975, it's either you escape or we're going to be killed. And we luckily escaped. So the idea when people say, but Jews and Muslims have lived together. I mean, yes, of course, in a 1400 years period, you're not going to have every single day butcherings. But have Jews lived as equal? No. And so the idea that Jews can now live with having full autonomous agency is an affront to some of the most fundamental doctrines within the religion. So, I mean, yes, at the extreme, you could talk about discussion of land, but it's a religious existential problem. Remove that element, both on the Jewish side and the Muslim side, and then there isn't a conflict anymore, right?
Yeah.
So the Jews believe in that land because of their religious stuff, and the other guys don't want them there for their religious stuff. Look, there's a great study that was done by Bill Warner. Bill Warner is a former physicist, a professor of physics, who after 9/11 decided to dedicate his life to a formal scientific study of the Islamic canons, the main three books of Islam, the Quran, the Hadith, and the Sirah, the biography of Muhammad. And so what he basically does is he applies a content analysis to those books to gauge different things. For example, how much anti-Semitism is there in those books, right? You don't have to guess. You could actually subject those books to a content analysis, which is a very formal scientific technique to study the content of books. And you could come to some conclusions. So you could compare how much hatred there is in the Old Testament to the Quran. You could compare how much Jew hatred there is in the Quran versus Mein Kampf. And I recommend for everybody to check out his work, and the results are not very pretty, right? So it's not as though Jew hatred magically started in 1948. It has always been part of the landscape. And until we have these Abrahamic religions spewing this kind of nonsense, we're always going to have this problem.
For sure, for sure. So yeah, it's not going to go away. And I think to circle back to something we said earlier, it's funny, like neither one of us are coming at this from a religious perspective. I don't come from this for a religious perspective. Sam Harris wrote that piece saying about why I don't criticize Israel, which he said to me in our interview. He said it was probably his most poorly phrased title ever, because the title itself welcomed the hate.
Exactly.
But everything he said, and it was the most tepid. He basically just said, I don't believe that anyone should have any land based on religion or blah, or ethnicity or blah, blah, blah. He basically said, if one group of people, that there's almost none of them left, who have been attacked and genocided and all that stuff that I said earlier, should have a tiny, shitty little piece of land with no oil, is probably these people. And yeah, I come from all of this purely with the same set of principles that I apply to everything else. So for example, if right today, if there was a genuine peace movement in the West Bank or in Gaza, and Israel was bombing people and indiscriminately killing people, and there was a peace movement, you know what I mean? There's a big peace rally, and Israel dropped the bomb on them. I would be beyond outrage. Exactly. I attack my side. That's why I've been so critical of the left, because I'm on the left. So I attack my side because I want it to be better, right? So if there was a legitimate peace movement, then of course I would not be for bombing. But if someone's attacking you, you attack them. That's the purpose of every nation state on earth. That's what it is. But there's none of that. And that's why our friends on the left are so misguided about how they treat this activity, because none of them will show any of the stabbings, and they don't show any sympathy to suicide bombings and murdering children and murdering old women. They don't care about any of that, because you can blame it on the occupation and on the Jews, which, as you said, it's all coded for, and the Jews. Right. But if there was any peace movement, I would be the loudest. I would be, because I would be applying the same principles that I apply elsewhere. I don't apply the soft bigotry of low expectations to the Palestinians. I don't. And until the West says we have to stop coddling them, they keep getting offers for peace and they refuse them. Their leaders have failed them. I have nothing. Look, how can I? You saw the picture of the store, the Hitler II store in Gaza. Did you see that?
I think so. Yeah.
A clothing store in Gaza, right? Everyone's they're under occupation. They make it sound like it's Auschwitz. They have a lot of nice stores there. A 5-star hotel just opened on the water over there in Gaza. I'm not saying there aren't problems. By the way, Egypt has their border completely closed. Israel lets stuff in, but whatever. We don't have to get into that. But the point is, how can I sympathize when I see videos coming out of Gaza with preachers preaching "kill all the Jews," and then at stores, a store called Hitler, and where they have mannequins with knives, holding knives. Well, guess what? You're not going to get a lot of sympathy. And for the people on the left that don't call them out, well, you're never going to get a state this way. So if you really want a state, you have to empower the moderates. And this is what our regressive friends have done horribly poorly, whether it's in Israel, Palestine, or in America. They've done
so linking this issue back to the sexual orientation, what do you think?
We can keep going.
Yeah, good. What do you think of the group Queers for Palestine?
It's so stupid. It's so absurdly stupid. It's so absurdly stupid. I was in Tel Aviv about maybe 4 years ago. I was in Tel Aviv walking in the middle. I don't even know. I have no idea what street I was on. In the middle of 4 a.m. or something, I had left a club and I saw 2 guys holding hands walking down the street. Nobody gave a flying fuck. Right. That's the way it's supposed to be. Try doing that anywhere else. Do that in Gaza. These idiots at Code Pink. Code Pink. Yeah,
of course. That's
these idiots that are supposedly for women's rights. Everywhere Israel goes, they protest. Yeah. Meanwhile, has Code Pink, are they protesting Saudi Arabia? Women can't drive.
Right.
Any protests for that?
Well,
it's all wrapped up in crazy hatred that has very little to do with anything.
I think Sam on your show had kindly referred to one of my famous or infamous tweets where I think I had challenged Glenn Greenwald because I think it was Glenn Greenwald if I'm not mistaken. He was spewing some nonsense, and then I had written to her. I had tweeted saying, "Hey, why don't you wear a T-shirt saying I am gay and Jewish and I don't believe whatever, something offensive, and walk around in some Middle Eastern thing and report back to us to let us know about the love and peace," right?
I'm guessing he didn't respond to that.
He did not respond to that. No, he didn't.
Yeah.
And by the way, I offered a similar challenge to C.J. Werleman, and of course he also deflected the challenge. I even offered that we would raise the money to send him on that thing, as long as he would take a video demonstrating him walking with that T-shirt in some Middle Eastern. And actually, people wrote to me saying, "Hey, we will contribute to that plane ticket." But CJ wasn't willing to go ahead with it.
Of course, and look again. I know this is so polarizing, and even if on your channel right now, most of the people agree with us, you're always going to get some people there. You're going to say some crazy stuff. And by the way, I'm always happy to debate this. I've debated this stuff a lot with my friends on the left who disagree with me. And I recently was someone that's in our space who I'm not going to mention, and for the record, it's not Cenk, but someone that's sort of in our space that you certainly know of.
Yes.
I was debating the Israel-Palestinian thing with, and basically I said everything that I said, and it became very obvious to me that in the course of the discussion that he didn't really know a lot about the history.
Right.
It was just very obvious to me, and it's hard to explain a lot of this without the history. So I sent a couple emails, I sent a couple messages with a couple articles that I thought might help clarify. And I said, if you've got something that will help me learn about whatever you think, then feel free to send it. And he basically said, it's best that we don't debate this anymore.
There you go.
And I thought, wow, so that at the end of the day, it fit everything we're talking about. It fit the ultimate idea, because at the end, the regressives are the ideologues. Yeah. They are the authoritarians. So he said, he basically was saying, I've made up my mind here. I don't want new information. And I also don't have information to counter what you've said. So we're just going to end this discussion. And remember, liberals are supposed to debate ideas.
Exactly.
And that is the perfect schism and definition of why this thing has happened between the regressives and the liberals.
And I think, by the way, it's going to sound a bit hyperbole to say this, but that's why I think the social justice warriors and all these campus activists are really the gentle version of all of those, ISIS types, right? They both seek to quell free speech, except that the way that they go about it, the strategy by which they implement their desire to shut you changes. So in the extreme case, and I think I might have mentioned this on your show, in the extreme case, they behead you. If they have the power to shut your speech by removing your head from the rest of your body, then that's, of course, the nicest way to do it. One swish and the head is off.
That is the nicest way to do it.
That is right. If regrettably I'm unable to remove your head, then I will find alternate means, more gentle, more peaceful means to shut you down. And I'll do that by JW activism. I'll do that by the regressive stuff. I'll do that by ruining your reputation, as they do with guys like Sam Harris. But it really comes from the same fascist tendencies, right? So they're just more gentle versions of ISIS. And of course, I say this with some hyperbole, but you get my point. They're not about debates. They're not about free speech. They're not about reason. They're about pushing their ideologies forward. And as somebody who escaped Lebanon, who knows the beauty of the experiment that we have, such a rare experiment. I mean, think about in recorded history how few places there have been. I mean, this is not the natural default state of things to have freedom of speech. And so we should be all contributing to its defense. And yet most people, worry about where they're going to buy their tomatoes tomorrow, while every day our freedoms are further abridged.
Yeah, and that's because what they've done is it's a perfect example of seeing how dangerous using words like racist and bigotry and all, it's a perfect example of that. Because once you've labeled someone that, then people don't want to talk to that person. People don't want to hear that person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I could not, everyone that believes in liberal values needs to stand up right now. As I said, here today, and as I said on my show yesterday, like, wake up now. You know what I mean? Like, the world is what you make of it. And if you don't make it something, well, someone that's bad is going to make it something that you don't like. And that's what we're facing right now.
And I think, and I've mentioned this example, but it's worth repeating. I think one of the reasons for the apathy of most people, beyond sort of the cowardice and so on, is something that is known, and I talk about this in one of my Sad Truth clips, the tragedy of the commons. Are you familiar with this notion?
No, I don't think so.
I think you'll like this analysis. I mean, the analysis exists in a different context, but I'm going to apply it to what we're talking about. So the tragedy of the commons is an economic dilemma. It basically operates as follows. Suppose that there's a plot of land that a lot of farmers are using, their livestock are grazing on. And if you keep grazing on it, the land is going to become irrevocably damaged. And so we all agree, all the farmers agree, that we will stop grazing on this land for the next 2 years. And of course, what ends up happening is that each of the farmers says, well, here's what's optimal for me. I will cheat on the agreement by having my livestock use the land. Hopefully the other 9 guys are honorable enough to not cheat, and then that's the best case scenario, because the land could recover and I get to have my livestock grazing on the land. Now, of course, the tragedy of the commons is that each of them commit this fallacy, and therefore they're stuck. Now, how do I apply this to the context that we're talking about? What ends up happening is everybody says, you know what, I don't have to take on this fight. It's too overwhelming. We've got Dave Rubin doing great stuff, and we got Sam Harris, and if I may say, we've got Saad and all these other guys that are worrying
Throw
about
that guy in there.
Throw in this guy and Majid and Douglas Murray and so on, and Ayaan Hirsi Ali. They'll worry about it. I got my son's graduation tomorrow, and I've got to pick up the tomatoes, and I've got a pizza party to go to tomorrow. And so everybody thinks that way, and therefore you've got your group of 25 activists that are carrying the burden for everybody. What you need to do is get people to extricate themselves from this alluring bias. Everybody has a stake in it. Everybody could. You could only share this video. That could be as little as that, but do that. You could like a Facebook, right? So it could be from the extreme. You could be Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who has to walk around with security detail, or you could just like something on Facebook. But if you're unwilling to even like something because your friends on Facebook might not like you as much, then you're complicitous to the problem, and you deserve everything that you get.
What's that incredible, there's that quote about the Holocaust, first they came for the Jews, then they came for the socialists, or whatever that quote is. It's a really brilliant quote, so I won't butcher it, but I'm sure we can find it after. But that's what it is. Exactly. They're going to come, they're going to come, they're going to come. You're never going to stand up. You're never going to stand up. You're never going to stand up. And then one day, guess what? You're going to say something they don't like, and then it's your ass on the line. So you're right. That's why and that's why I said earlier, I don't want to guilt people into feeling they have to be public and change their avatars if they have legitimate reasons. But if it's just laziness, if it's just be brave, try to be a little braver, try to be a little brave. I'm not some fucking brave warrior. You know what I mean? I'm just some guy at the end of the day. I'm just some guy that I think I'm doing something that's pretty good, basically.
You are indeed, sir. You are indeed. So how are we doing on time? You need to get ready, no?
Oh my! All right, 10 more.
That's got to be good. Good feedback when the guy is about to leave across the continent and he can't extricate himself from the Godfather. That's got to be good feedback.
All right, we're in overtime now. 10 minutes. Let's do it.
We better see a lot of new subscribers. We're both going. I mean, it's late here, very late. I'm up. They better subscribe to both of our. Now, you don't need subscribers. You've got 200,000, but help a brother out with 16,000 subscribers, for God's sake.
Well, I'll do everything I can. I don't have 200,000 yet, but
or something, some incredible number.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another one. So to move away from sort of the Israel issue and so on. So I had this this exchange, very annoying exchange with a so I found out about this woman who's got a website called Rape by Fraud, which basically works as follows. If a man lies about his history, and in the commission of those lies, he then beds you, then he has this is her speaking now, he has fraudulently gotten sexual access to you, and therefore, in the same way that you, if you violate a business contract, it could be fraudulent. If he's getting into, if I can say it this way, into your pants in a fraudulent manner by lying about who he is, about his education, about his marital status, then he's being fraudulent, and therefore he should be punished by a rape by fraud penalty that is punishable by 10 to 20 years. So I put up a sad truth clip where, and this is going to get to the issue of resolving debates and freedom of speech and so on. So I'll tie it in a second to that. And so I put up a clip, which you're welcome to go and watch, where I think I was, very tepid, and I'd even mention her name. I mean, I had to mention the site because people want to go and check that it's real. I'm not making this stuff up, right? So it wasn't personal. I didn't target her. I didn't mention her name. And I just thought, what a lunatic position to have, right? I mean, she's proposing a public position, and I have the right to rebut it, right? Yeah. So she got very upset by it, created a site where I became known as the king enabler of the rape by fraud movement. And then she started tracking every single person who would retweet something of mine or tweet or like something. She would take their Twitter handle and put it up like as a form of shaming, right? So I wrote to her. You could go check the exchange. I tried to engage her very politely, say, look, I mean, I'm not sure if this is appropriate, but I mean, look, you're free to do whatever you want. It could be libelous, it could be slanderous. She goes, no, the fact that you came after me the way that you did, that was slanderous and libelous, and I'm going to shut you down and so on. So this person felt, this is a Western woman who's taken the position that if somebody lies to you, which basically all online dating would cease to exist if you criminalized lying as a form of rape, right? I mean,
every man that ever met a girl at a bar would be in jail.
Right. How about push-up bras? How about cosmetics? How about, right? I mean, there's endless ways by which men and women lie to each other. If anything, there are evolutionary explanations for that duplicity. And
George Costanza alone in Seinfeld, the whole thing, he would have spent the entire series
exactly.
in jail.
Now, incidentally, I took the position, and it's a true position. I truly live my life this way. I said, look, I find lying to be unethical, immoral, improper. That's not how you should conduct your life. But to place an appellation of rape by fraud for somebody who tricks you into bed is just absolutely insane. And now this woman, of course she's gone away now, but this woman had threatened to come after me with lawsuits for defaming her. So think about the state of people's understanding of freedom of speech, where she espouses a public position, I attack or critique that public position, that was defaming her. What do you think of that?
What do I think? I mean, I wish I could be surprised. How about that?
Exactly.
I wish I could be surprised, but I can't be surprised by that because this is what we've created. Not we, but this is what has been created here, and it's all lunacy. And look, again, someone like that, what they accidentally do once you respond to them publicly is then the people that appreciate you and like the work that you do and like what you think, guess what? They go, this person's bonkers talking about her. And then that strengthens them. So that's what I do think is going on.
But by the way, I'm sorry, sorry to interject. That's what happened. And she sort of accused me of egging these people on. But of course I didn't, right? It's not as though I said, hey guys, please tweet to this woman some nasty stuff. But they were so angered by her position that as individual autonomous agents, they started tweeting to her, and then she used that against me.
By the way, this tactic that you're talking about is born of the regressive left. Exactly. Because think about this. Think about what, again, without really getting into the Sam thing, all the lies that they throw against Sam Harris, right? Then he defends himself. Then they say, oh, he's so defensive, or they'll say he's why, if he didn't say these awful things, then why does he always have to defend himself? And it's like, you make up shit that he says,
Right.
then he defends himself, then you get angry for defending him. Then his fans or his followers or the people that have read his books will quote actual things, or they'll clip videos correctly. Lalo Degach has been a great one on this. And then they'll show it to the antagonists, that group of awful people whose names need not be mentioned.
Right.
And they just double down even more.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. That's the difference. So I think, to sort of wrap up everything we've talked about here, that I think what we, and when I say we, I mean the group of free-thinking people who want people to coexist, who don't want to judge people based on all the identity politics and all that. I would welcome anyone that's watching this to go back to we've been on Aura now for 2 months. Watch my video with Sam, watch my video with Ion, watch my video with Majid and with you and with Kara and whoever it is, and see if you find hatred and bigotry in those videos.
Exactly.
Really, really watch them and see if you find that Sam's goal really is to nuke the Middle East because there's Muslims there, or to profile Muslims. Really see if what Ayan, who survived genital mutilation and a forced marriage to a cousin and her friend being assassinated on the streets of Amsterdam, all in the name of religion, see if what she is the bigot. See if Majid, who has spent his life trying to reform, who's Muslim, who identifies as Muslim, and who's trying to reform his religion, see if he's really the extremist here. If I have said something that sounds like the real extremist, I talk about peace in the Middle East, I talk about free thinking ideas and all of these things, and apply those things to you. And I think if people could step back for just a second, they would really realize, and it doesn't mean you have to agree with everything they say. You might say, well, you know what? I still don't like Sam Harris doesn't lay enough blame on the American industrial complex, the military industrial complex, for X or YZ, or Ayan is still more of a neocon than I might be. But those are policy issues that we all can disagree on, right? It doesn't mean that their motives are based in hatred or whatever. These are true reformers trying to apply the principles that we as liberals, they're trying to have those principles take root in a part of the world that these things are totally backwards. Right. And you can argue whether it's all religion or it's geopolitics or it's all of that. We can do that. But watch those videos and go, who are the extremists? And guess what? It's not us. It's not us. It's the people that are the extremists, right? It's the real extremists that are chopping people's heads off and doing horrible things. But then it's also the people who enable them by trying to silence us.
Exactly.
That is simply the truth. So I think that was my closing argument.
That was a beautiful closing argument. Let's end it with the following. Do you have anything that you'd like to plug in terms of upcoming guests that can get us all excited about tuning into your show?
So we have a couple. It's really nice now because I have a lot of really great people reaching out to me, and people are sending me, names of people that I should talk to. So we've had a flood. So next week I have Christina Hoff Sommers.
Oh yes,
the factual feminist,
the anti-feminist, yes,
the anti-feminist. But I want to talk to her about. We have a ton of stuff we want to talk about, and we'll talk about a lot of what we've covered here. And then I think I'm taking off a week for Thanksgiving. Then when I get back, we have a couple great. We have Peter Boghossian. I wasn't sure if I was going to pronounce his name right. Peter Boghossian is coming on, and then I have Nick Cohen. Do you know Nick Cohen?
Yes.
A ton of people said I had to talk to him. That he's really, they say, the father of the idea of breaking down the regressive left in England. And then I'm working on a couple of celebrity friends of mine. I want to branch out to do more stuff. I even said on the show. Oh, I did my closing statement already, so I'll really wrap this quick.
Yeah.
I even said on the show a couple weeks ago, I do want to move away from some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Every time I try to move away, it's like the mafia. They suck me back in because every time I try to move away, well, then something happens on campus that's perfectly related to what we're talking about. So I hope we can keep talking about a lot of big ideas. And you know how much I love politics. I want to talk about the election and all that. So we got a lot of fun things in store. That's what I would say. But more than anything else, it's always a pleasure.
Oh, it was unbelievable. We could probably go on for another 5 hours. Thank you so much for extending it. I was expecting only an hour, but I got bonus time with the great Dave Rubin.
I think I missed my flight.
Have a fantastic trip. And hey, prepare Southern California for the Godfather. February, I'll be there with a pretty dress on.
Wow. Then we'll really have something to talk about.
Nice seeing you, Dave. I'm
It
going to
was
stop the
fun.
tape. And stay on. I'm going to stop the
Yeah.
thing for a second.